The Sun Devils will try to bounce back after last week's loss to Oklahoma State, and this week they welcome Fresno State to town. This is a team that's won 11 games straight dating back to last season. What does ASU need to do to get back on the winning track? We'll break it all down in our preview. I'm Nick Borgia, Devil's Digest, alongside of our publisher, Hode Urbino. And Hode, I know the 2023 season is still young, it's only week 3, but Arizona State finds themselves in a similar situation as being a home underdog. And on top of that, maybe acting in some desperation as they've faced a lot of challenges in the past.
Yeah, absolutely right, Nick. I mean, I think that on the one hand, just like we were talked about week 1 overreaction last week, maybe there is some week 2 overreaction, going on right now. It definitely was a disappointing game against Oklahoma State. The first half, everything seemed to go pretty well, both on offense and defense, but second half, especially on the offensive side, things really came to unravel. The offense did not score any points in the second half. We knew that there were offensive line injuries going into the game. Emmett Boley, the right tackle for Arizona State, gets injured very early in the first quarter. So those are some of the things that ASU did have to deal with and will continue to deal with. Kenny Dillingham, after Wednesday's practice, talked about some bumps and bruises that this team is actually really faced with in terms of challenges. So I think there is something to maybe being in a somewhat of desperation mode, because let's face it, I think all week long has not been a week where things have gone smoothly for Arizona State, and I think that just the fan base and their sentiments, like you said, being an underdog again at home. You look at reporters that do cover the Pac-12. Some of them are listing one loss that the Pac-12 is going to suffer this week in non-conference games, and that is the game over here in Tempe. So I think that every win is important, but I think the win is just a little sweeter when you're dealing with so much adversity like Arizona State is. Again, a home underdog to a Group 5 team, no less. So I think that a win this week could really help Arizona State. Does really lower the flame, and more importantly, just give a lot of confidence for both the coaching staff and the players that things are going in the right direction. And what happened last week against Oklahoma State was an aberration and not a huge warning sign for things to come.
So let's talk about Fresno State. As I mentioned, they're undefeated, escaped with a close victory against Purdue, also a victory in their schedule over Eastern Washington. This is an offense of the Bulldogs that is averaging 36.5 points per game. That's a lot, and the Sun Devil defense is going to have their hands full as the Bulldogs come to town.
Yeah, absolutely right. They're averaging 302 yards passing, 124 yards rushing, so maybe not that much of a ground attack, but obviously they make up a lot of it in the air. But I think in fairness, you also talk about facing a defense that they haven't faced until now. Arizona State's defense is ranked 25 nationally in total defense. With all due respect to Purdue and Eastern Washington, those are not defenses of the caliber of the Sun Devils. The quarterback for Fresno State, Mickey Keene, a name that's very familiar to fans over here in the Valley. He led Chandler High School to a state championship in 2020. He's not a quarterback that's really going to hurt you with his feet. Throwing off platform is not really a strength of his. He just does a good job just sitting in the pocket and dealing from there. I'm really curious to see, Nick, what kind of approach Arizona State's going to take, because on the one hand, it definitely is a defense that is very, very aggressive up front with their front six. We saw them play very well against Oklahoma State in the first half, and really the aggressiveness is what really helped Arizona State play well on that side of the ball. And I think they also trust the secondary behind them, that even if they're left on an island on one-on-one matchups, that they can still prevail more often than not. The thing is, Purdue actually did take that approach and got punished severely at home, no less, giving up 39 points. Eastern Washington, if anybody watched that game last week, they really sat back in somewhat of a zone coverage and really dared Mickey Keene to dissect them, and they didn't have really great success in that regard. Yes, Fresno State did win, but that was a game at home against Eastern Washington where they needed double overtime to come away with a victory. So I think that what Eastern Washington did last week maybe is more the blueprint on how to stop this Fresno State offense. But nonetheless, I just think that this ASU defense definitely has the tools, definitely has the personnel to really slow down the Bulldogs offense. And whether the coaches and players in Fresno are saying that publicly or privately, they know that this is not a defense where they can come and expect to score, over 4 or 5 touchdowns in this game. One thing I do want to touch on is a punting, because Josh Carlson has really struggled the first 2 games, averaging under 40 yards, and I just feel that the last thing you want to do, especially for an offense like Fresno State, is really give them a short field. So the offense may have its struggles, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but the punting really has to be on point, because you do not want to make a very good ASU defense just work that much harder trying to defend one short field, after another. But I think that the Fresno State offense is going to be slowed down this week, just because that the Arizona State defense has played very well. Not perfect football by any means, but I think the numbers that they put up until now do give a lot of confidence in that matter.
So Fresno State has stayed out of the losing column, but their defense really hasn't had a lot to do with that. They're averaging 33 points allowed per game. So this is a unit that the Sun Devil offense is really going to have an opportunity to capitalize on. What do you see there, Hode?
Yeah, I agree, Nick. I mean, if there's any game this year that the Arizona State offense, I'm not going to say exploding, lining up the scoreboard, but definitely getting out of the funk that there is right now. I think this is exactly a great opportunity for them to do. The Fresno State defense in scoring defense ranked 112th out of 132 FBS teams. It's almost like as this defense is like an Arena League defense. They're just waiting for the offense to bail them out. And sure, it's a strategy that worked very well for them in the first 2 games. I don't think they're coming here brimming with confidence, but then again, facing a true freshman quarterback in Jalen Rashada maybe does put some pep in their step. We'll see if it's warranted or not. But I think that one point that Kenny Dillingham made earlier in the week, he said that maybe the coaching staff is going to save some of its top plays for the second half to really make sure that they can avoid those second half lulls. I mean, don't forget, even in the season opener against Southern Utah, the offense only scored 3 points. It was on a field goal. As I mentioned earlier, did not score any points in the second half against Oklahoma State. So definitely a different approach, and more importantly, just really winning that chess game matchup after the opponent does halftime adjustments. That's something that really does need to take place. I think this offense really just needs to play within itself. Now we talk about the desperation mode, and this offense is definitely going to be more than highly motivated to really get on the right track, play 2 halves of football. But with all the offensive line injuries that I mentioned, they're going to have to be very, very judicious to know what they can and cannot do run blocking, what they can and cannot do in pass blocking, and really try not to do too much. If I'm circling back to the punting, some people say that maybe because of Josh Carlson's struggles, ASU was going for it. On a fourth down more often than not. And sure, they had some success in the first half. I mean, you give credit is due. That was not so much the case, in the second half. So even if it's going to be a matter of Dillingham being maybe tempted to go for it on fourth down, but rather opting for the punting, not to just deliver another blow for the offense, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that you're not giving the defense, a very good defense, a short field to defend. I think that's maybe a different line of thinking that should take place depending on the flow of the game. But again, I think this offense just really cannot overreach. I mean, I know they might have some a big appetite and big eyes seeing those really poor defensive numbers that Fresno State is putting up. But again, this is an offense that really has a lot to prove. Again, a lot of injuries on the offensive line. So just make sure that you're being very judicious in how you approach this game and just really be creative, really throw more and more wrinkles at your opponent, because again, I think that even though this Fresno State defense doesn't have a whole lot to celebrate this year, they're thinking they have an easy opponent with the Sun Devils, and that's something that if ASU wants to come away with a win, that's a theory that definitely has to be disproved.
So we've discussed the shortcomings of this Fresno State team, the strength, everything that ASU is dealing with. With all those aspects in mind, how do you see this game going down on Saturday night at Mountain America Stadium?
Well, Nick, this game really has to come down to the defenses. I said, if you remember in the preseason, that there's going to be a lot of occasions where the ASU defense is going to have to bail out the ASU offense. They did that in the season opener. They almost were able to do that against Oklahoma State, but the offense was stalling so much that really was out of reach, if you will, for the ASU defense to do that. But right now, when you have an ASU defense that is ranked 25th nationally in total defense, even though they got easily their toughest opponent offensive-wise all year long, the game has to be won on that side of the ball. And on the other side of the ledger, as I mentioned, this is not a good Fresno State defense. I mean, you can talk about their offense as much as you want, and yes, they can outscore their opponent, and that's how they're winning games. But this has to be a game where the ASU offense, just like Eastern Washington and just like Purdue, is able to put more than 30 points on the board. Again, talk about even distribution of production over the first half and the second half. I think that when you have right now maybe little circle the wagons mentality, again, I don't think there's anybody outside of Maricopa County that thinks that ASU can win this game, and maybe a good portion of the ASU fan base in state isn't too confident. A win this week can really do wonders to the confidence. Again, just lower the flames, if you will. Really does change the narrative concerning the Sun Devils. And again, when you win as a home underdog, when you win when a lot of people think that you can't win and can list many more reasons why you should lose than why you should come away victorious, I think a win can definitely help Arizona State. And I think they do come out of their funk, and they actually win 31-23.
31-23. Well, thank you so much for your insight, Hode. As always, for continuous coverage of this contest and the rest of the season here at ASU. Keep it locked in at DevilsDigest.com. Drop a follow at Devils Digest on Twitter. For Hode Urbino, I'm Nick Borgia. We thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you on Saturday night.